Sustainable Lawn Care Initiative project team. And so it's me, Cedric Lademet, Landon, Andrew Chase, Connor Nichols, and Vasilios Konstantakos.
Yeah, so with sustainable lawn care, the first thing we really need to look at is the problem, and that is Ohio State's issue with lawn care. We're looking at stewardship goals, which are the goals set by the university to increase sustainability, environmentalism on campus. Some of these are like reducing potable water consumption by 10%, decreasing overall fleet emissions by 20-25%, and we're only at 21.7 currently. And also a massive decrease, which means a massive decrease needs to be achieved, a zero waste goal by 2025, and an increased ecosystem index by 85%.
So like Andrew just mentioned, we have these big goals here at Ohio State to reduce our ecological footprint. And luckily, lawn care is one of those areas where we can impact all of those goals at the same time. If any of you have ever worked in lawn care, you know that there is a huge focus on disposability. Most lawn care equipment is understood to be fragile and disposable, and oftentimes relies on very non-renewable resources like gasoline and oil mixtures. So if we were to reduce our use of lawn care in Ohio State, we would reduce the microplastics and carcinogenic chemicals we have around campus. Other things that would improve is the air quality in the water. If any of you have ever been around equipment like for lawn care, you're going to know it smells bad and it might give you a headache. That's not good for you. It'll also reduce our fleet usage and the associated emissions that come with that. So less workers having to go out and work all the time. And we can reduce our staff levels by creating easier to maintain landscapes. So instead of very tight knit, must be very well kept areas, we could have larger plots of land that are easier to maintain.
Yeah, so our plan, kind of the first stage of it, is to replace the products and not so much the emitter, like the major emitters, like our lawnmowers and leaf blowers. So our current plan is to research alternatives, which we've already started. So we've researched, like this is a trimmer that kind of trims the edges of lawns. And and it uses this plastic cord, as you can see by that yellow cord right there. And that plastic, as it cuts, breaks up into microplastics that get embedded into our soil and then into our groundwater. And so a great way of reducing that microplastic is actually using a different material. And so we've researched and kind of communicated with the company about our proposal, and they actually have a product that is 50% compostable. So that's already kind of a gain that we could see in our first stage. But more or less, our first stage, we're going to research it. We're going to create presentations and information packets about the material. So not only trimmer line, but various pesticides and other chemicals that we use here at OSU could be replaced by more sustainable alternatives. So we need to create those presentations and those information packets and hand them to OSU lawn care professionals so we can transition to them. And then we need to coordinate their purchase and implementation with the grounds crew. So our project timeline currently, we're thinking about 4 weeks of research. I think we could probably cut that down, but 4 weeks is a really safe estimate. It's going to take about 2 weeks to create those presentation and kind of communication materials. And then about 6 weeks of coordination with the OSU administration to do that purchasing and get it all done. So we're hoping we're pretty much planning about 3 months this next semester. Our budget would be just, we believe, $0 for this project, this research project itself. Obviously the purchasing is going to cost whatever it's going to cost, but that would be handled by the OSU admin.
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward how this first stage is going to be implemented. Socially speaking, this is something that we want to do because it's going to help the environment in the end. Economically, like Cedric said, the cost is going to be what the cost is. It's not going to be like a gigantic research project. It's just implementation of more sustainable materials, and environmentally with decompostability in mind, it's going to be better overall.
And just to add to that economic viability, OSU has brought about these stewardship goals, and they've pretty much said, hey, we'll spend the money if there's the need for it. And so we feel like that's really going to hit really hard on the economic, which a lot of sustainability projects have issues kind of getting the economic resources. And so we feel like that's where our project excels. And so kind of further than this project, so this is, you know, past next semester and past this project, we really want to focus on fleet usage here at OSU. That's a huge emitter. Actually, 25% of US hydrocarbons are from small engines, and a large part of that is lawn care. And so we want to research fleet reduction techniques. This right here is an electric lawnmower, similar to in size to the lawnmowers we use here at OSU. And we feel like transitioning to electric would massively reduce our emissions, and especially our hydrocarbon emissions, which are generally considered some of the worst emissions that we create here at OSU. And then beyond that, we want to research watering techniques. Right now, if you've been on campus recently, you'll see sprayers spraying our landscaping features. And that's actually not the greatest use of water. And when we spray, especially like in early mornings and stuff, not the best, and we can definitely do it better than we do right now. But beyond that, we need to, like the grass species that we have here on campus are not necessarily the most optimum for our area in Ohio, but they look kind of pretty. So if we can research other types and redo that, we'll have a much more sustainable and much more environmentally friendly landscape. And then beyond that is just researching and coordinating with the lawn care industry on new technologies and practices that we can implement at OSU. So we've already kind of done that a little bit. We've contacted 2 companies just to get kind of their insight on our proposal. And we've gotten some good feedback, and we've actually gotten just some like offers like, hey, if this proposal goes through, like we really want to help with this and see how we can kind of showcase our products on a large scale like OSU. So we've already gotten some interest there. And that concludes our presentation. So do you all have any questions about our project? Jordan.
Hey, Matt, this is Mike Shelton.
Hey, Mike, hang on,
Hi,
we got a
Mike.
question in the audience, then we'll go to you.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
What if you like, I don't know, I look at the grass that we have on campus, it just looks like that. They all look the same, or is there like different varieties that are like better or worse?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, okay, so the question was like, Jordan sees the grass on campus and she's wondering like what the different types are and how they can reduce emissions here at OSU. And so how I'd respond to that is like the grass that's currently on campus is made to look pretty. And so we use grass types that are somewhat native to Ohio, but not necessarily like native to our area. And so if we were to expand to other less pretty looking grass types, we would have less watering, less herbicides, less pesticides to control those native species coming back to this area. And so right now we very much like control what is grown on campus. If we let that more or less go and we just use native species, we'd be watering it less. And honestly, it would probably stand out better to foot traffic. I know if you've been in the North Campus area, the plot between Blackburn and Scott, they have a bunch of issues managing that grass. And that's partially because they're using, I guess, less like strong grass because it looks a bit prettier.
Yeah, I think it's enough.
Exactly, yeah. So- And so you had a question, Mike?
Sure. And I apologize. I have probably more comments than questions. Great project, great topic overall. Appreciate you all putting the time and effort into this. I would say just generally, as you approach this topic, I would offer that as you interact with the staff within FOD who manages the grounds, you should go in with the assumption that they have already investigated most of these topics and implemented the measures that they have the resources to implement. For example, I think they've already incorporated electric blowers into their fleet and want to make a lot of these changes, for example, converting to electric mowers, but there are various constraints, whether that be the upfront purchase cost of those vehicles, the fact that there's still lifespan on existing vehicles. So what would happen to those after, we're disposing them before the end of their life cycle? But then also, even the management techniques have been investigated in terms of water reuse. And I think there's an active pilot going on around reusing non-potable water in some locations for maintaining the health of the turf grass. And then, of course, in terms of species, we have a pretty advanced turf grass research program at Ohio State based at Waterman Lab. So they would certainly be a resource. And I know the staff has interacted with that team to look at some of the most appropriate species to be using on campus in different locations. But again, generally speaking, cool season grasses are going to be what grows in Ohio and central Ohio. And it's there's not a ton of difference between those cool season grasses in terms of use and performance, largely speaking. But so I guess just overall, I would say, as you approach staff, I would not go in with the assumption that you're bringing things that have not already been considered and looked into, though certainly it benefits them that there is interest within student groups for these, because that helps, motivate some decision making and resources when necessary. But and again, just see if there's an opportunity to link in with the turf grass program folks up at Waterman. They're a leading program in the Midwest.
Yeah, thanks for your comment, Mike. So I guess expanding on that, we did try and get in contact with, I believe 3 people related to lawn care and turf management here at OSU. We were having some trouble getting them to discuss kind of our choices. So I guess this future stages was more theoretical, more like what we saw on campus, not so much based on what OSU is doing. What we did see though with our, when we said utilization, so blowers, I don't know where you are located, but on campus, like at least in the North Campus and kind of central oval area, they've been using gas powered blowers. And so that's kind of the assumption that we were making with this presentation. And then beyond that, some of the technology like the, what's it called, trimmer plastic that we were talking about, that's not yet on the market. So I actually worked this past summer for a lawn care company, and that's where I'm getting some of this, I guess, like insight into, I guess, future developments in that space. But I really appreciate your comment. That's honestly great. A great addition for us to think about going forward.
And if you're having trouble contacting staff, let us know who you've reached out to, and we might help facilitate dialogue there.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I can help. I can provide. All right, whenever you're ready.
All right, so my name's Tegan.
I'm Molly.
I'm Jessica.
I'm Jordan.
And today we're going to be talking about controlling waste on campus.
So our plan is to incorporate more waste bins like trash cans and recycling bins, just pretty much not all of campus, but around campus. And along with that, we want to add signs on the recycling bins so people know what you can recycle and what not to recycle. So its necessity is to stop waste bins from overflowing. Like this picture, you can see like a lot of bins around campus are overflowing, which cause people to have to recycle things that aren't supposed to be recycled or put things that should be recycled in the trash cans. So then another thing that we're hoping to fix is like we want to always pair trash cans and recycling bins together. So then that eliminates this problem.
Yeah, as you can see in that picture, that trash can is overflowing and it's not paired.
Yeah, so one thing that actually made me gravitate towards this project was I had an experience where I was over by Mirror Lake and I was eating lunch. And once I was done, I still had like food left over. And so I went to go throw it away because I wanted to recycle the container but throw away the food. And there was only a recycling bin. So I literally had no choice but to like put the food in the recycling, contaminating like everything else that was already in there. So that's obviously a big problem, because that's like not the only location where I've seen it. And it kind of renders the whole recycling program like pretty much useless if that happens.
So we're thinking that this project can be completed around 6 to 8 months. Applying for grants and scholarships, we're thinking will take around 2 to 4 months. Ordering bins and lids after we order them, we should probably get them around 2 to 4 weeks later. While we are ordering the bins, we're gonna work on the labels, and those will be done probably 1 to 2 weeks. And then putting the bins and the labels in the correct spots that we choose will take another 1 to 2 weeks.
So our project encourages the main goals of not only Ohio State, but also the city of Columbus by creating a cleaner and more sustainable environment. Our project encourages this because it helps OSU students as well as parents and other guests to gain knowledge of which items they're throwing away, which items are recyclable and which ones are not. And they can also have easy access to these recycling and trash bins around campus instead of walking way too far or having the temptation to just throw stuff on the ground or in the wrong bin. Also, it improves campus thoughtfulness in regards to sustainability and maintaining a cleaner environment.
So our project definitely comes with a lot of strengths and oppositions in regards to its plan and its execution. Some of our strengths include it being an achievable goal and a very practical idea. When you think of waste management, the first thing that personally pops into my head is, offering more places to put waste if we can't reduce the amount of waste that is coming off this campus. So getting more trash and recycling bins is a pretty good solution to the problem at the moment. It's also a universal agreement that waste management can be an issue on this campus. I know we've all been walking around on a weekend or a game day and there's trash everywhere, like literally everywhere. And it's an issue, like nobody wants to see that in their city or like on their campus. And it's something that can definitely be fixed if we implement the right solution. There's also a rising popularity of recycling and sustainability on our campus. That can even be displayed by the existence of this learning community. It is relatively new, and there's a lot of other things kind of stemming from the same idea. Like I said before, it's a realistic goal to get more waste bins on campus, and it also improves the overall knowledge about recycling and sustainability within the OSU community. In regards to oppositions to our project, there's unfortunately a high cost of new trash cans, something we didn't expect going into it. We would also have to rely on other campus employees to follow our recycling and waste disposal protocol. All the trash bins and recycling bins around campus are managed by like different groups and different staffs. So that could be something that could be hard to oversee with like one general protocol. And we would also have to rely on the student body to go along with these changes and respect the recycling protocols, which can be an issue. However, there are solutions to these oppositions. In regards to the cost, there are a lot of grants and scholarships that we can apply to that are widely available to students for projects such as these. And in regards to staffing and student reliance on our students going along with the new recycling and waste management protocol, there is going to be a new Buckeye Link course offered really soon, kind of going over like correct recycling and that kind of stuff. So the student body and the campus body will have a general good idea of how recycling should be done. So, sorry. During our project, we worked with Molly Kathleen from Zero Waste on Campus, and we learned a lot of things from her. We learned the cost of new trash bins and the different individual parts for each trash bin. We also learned that trash cans within 15 feet of an individual building are maintained by the staff of that building. Like I said before, this could make it hard to kind of navigate the different challenges of maintaining and going along with the protocols for recycling. We also learned that black trash bags go for a landfill and clear go to recycling. One thing that happened when we were talking to Molly is we were actually on Google Earth with her, like looking at the trash cans and stuff around Mirror Lake. And she zoomed in on a recycling bin and she was like, oh, there's a black bag in there. Like, so even if people are even trying to recycle, like it's going to the landfill. So that's an example of kind of like the maintenance issue of it. Like there definitely needs to be more oversight about stuff like that. She told us about the different brands of litter containers that Ohio State uses. They use Doomer and Victor Stanley trash cans. And then the trash cans around Mirror Lake are managed by Landscape Services. Finally, Paul Satyak is an employee over at Uniprint who can help us with creating better signage to indicate what should be recycled and what cannot be recycled.
So speaking of the two brand names that Ohio State uses for recycling and trash bins, the more it's going to cost, like the trash bin itself is going to cost around $1,300, while the Victor Stanley model is going to be more around like $900. And we're planning to purchase around like approximately three recycling bins and 3 trash bins, and they'll be placed in the most busiest campus, probably the Thompson Library, the Union, and even on High Street campus side of High Street, and even around the stadiums.
Yeah, we also noticed there are no trash cans in front of Thompson Library, which I feel is a pretty busy spot. So there needs to be some out there.
And 6 bins may seem like nothing, but we want to start smaller just because we don't know how much money we can get from grants and scholarships. And then if we see issues arising other places, then we can always apply for more grants and then hopefully add more bins.
So when researching if there were other projects that were tried to be incorporated by other student groups, we couldn't find anything. So we believe our project is the right fit, and for something of this idea, it's very time efficient, easily achievable. Once we get bins out there, there's little upkeep involved. If we see a place that needs a new bin, we can just apply for more money and get a new bin.
Also, I feel like even if we can't get the money for additional bins, if we kind of put more effort into maintenance for the bins that we already have, that could also really significantly improve our waste management.
All right, that concludes our presentation. So does anybody have any questions for us?
Good job, first of all.
Thank you.
We probably have time for 1 or 2 questions. All right, we have a question from the class.
You said Thompson Library, which is the place with the trash bins. And I know for a fact there are trash bins, because I always get mad because I always have to put stuff out when I'm there. But I know for a fact right inside Thompson Library, right inside the front doors, they have 3 trash bins right there. So do you guys know what buildings have trash bins right inside that people just don't know about that could benefit from being outside, I guess? Because
I'm
the
not
ones inside are
sure.
always those plastic cheap
Yeah, I
ones.
think maybe the art pack, there might be one outside of the art pack, and there might be a few more inside. There definitely is, because there's eateries in there. But yeah, even if there are some on the inside of Thompson, I feel like there should be at least one outside, because people are always walking by, or they'll just go to the cafe,
Good question. Any other questions? Question for you all. When Molly was telling you about kind of how waste is managed on our campuses, did she provide those challenges, or were those challenges that you all kind of identified on your own?
Wait, which ones? The
The challenges you
the
had.
oppositions we talked
Yeah.
about?
I think like a little bit of both,
Yeah.
honestly.
Gotcha.
A lot of it was kind of just like things that Molly candidly said, like the whole, when she was on Google Earth and she was like, oh, like that's a black bag. And she was telling us about how everything is managed by like a different group. So she told us about that one. And then other things like getting the student body to kind of respect the changes and respect waste management is something that we just agreed mutually would be an
Yeah.
issue overall.
Gotcha. So I guess, do you see your time, if this were chosen to be implemented this spring, do you see most of your time being spent on securing funding for the bins or on trying to like educate, like the signage, the telling people about the class, or kind of both?
Yeah, I think both,
Yeah,
because they both go together. So yeah, I think both.
I think a decent amount of time will also be spent on like trying to figure out the best way to do the labeling, like so that it would be the most clear for like especially guests on game day.
Everyone, we are the Light Pollution Project. My name is Amanda Finale.
I'm Amanda Newberry, Molly Molina.
I'm Lucy Reed.
So light pollution is essentially any unnecessary light that floods the sky. It wastes energy and it's detrimental to humans and animals alike. So it can mess with people's sleep patterns and their circadian rhythms. And it also makes night sky viewing more difficult, especially in densely populated areas. You can see on this picture that the light pollution is highest in the most populous parts of our country. Okay, by a show of hands, how many of you have live in Scott House and have windows that face the stadium? Okay, and how many of you have windows that face the clock tower? All right, notice that the majority of you guys just raised your hand for either one of those options. And keep this in mind because we'll be coming back to it later.
So our plan is to bring down the amount of light being emitted into the atmosphere from our campus. So the main steps that we're planning on taking to accomplish this goal will be to first get in contact with stadium managers about turning off the stadium press box lights. So they're on at all hours of the night, and it makes this like big LED halo above the show. And not only is it distracting for the students whose dorms face the stadium, it contributes to the light pollution problems that we're about to talk about. Next, we're going to create a petition that the students can sign to demonstrate their support for reducing light pollution. And this can be as simple as camping out on the Oval for an afternoon and like talking to other environmental organized student orgs like Sierra Club, Mountaineers, Astro Society is a good one, or the Society for Ecological Restoration at one of their monthly meetings. The next phase is going to be to speak with somebody about revamping the campus lighting. So we're going to discuss the do's and don'ts of outdoor lighting in our coming slides. And when we talk about redoing this lighting, we have to find a compromise that helps the university run the best. There's a lot of unideal factors about Ohio State's outdoor lighting that we're going to get into. But first, let's talk about why it's important to reduce light pollution.
So light pollution is bad. It is a form of pollution that people kind of forget about, besides like air pollution, water pollution. So the main thing is you can't see the night sky, which is just like really sad. And it's aesthetically pleasing. It can make you feel better because it's pretty, fun stuff. Also, unwanted lights on, it wastes energy, and less energy equals less money you're spending. Also, energy waste is bad for the environment. And then it's beneficial for both animals and humans. For example, for animals, birds use the stars to navigate sometimes. And sometimes instead they'll use street lights or buildings with reflected lights on it to navigate, and then they'll crash into those buildings. So that's bad for birds, nocturnal animals. Their circadian rhythms get messed up because they don't know when it's day or night. And for humans alike, we also get our circadian rhythms messed up. And like students don't sleep enough as it is. And like now we sleep even less because we think it's so light out. And then nighttime glare on the road, like when it's raining and there's street lights that reflect into your eyes, that can be really dangerous. And then this is just a little diagram of the stars you should be able to see at night. So it's Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and Draco, aka the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, and like a dragon. And you should be able to see them, but you can't.
Okay, so remember when earlier you guys all raised your hands because your windows faced artificial light sources? Well, that's just one example of how light pollution can affect us as students on OSU's campus. Artificial light can disrupt our natural circadian rhythms, as Amanda was talking about, which is like your body's internal clock telling you when to go to sleep, when to wake up. And that just light outside that's shining into your window all day long can really throw you off. Upward facing lights are not good for the environment, nor good for our safety. As you can see from this diagram right here, lights that are pointed downwards actually light more of the ground rather than the lights that are pointed upwards or in all directions. It really wastes a lot of the energy that is being put into those lights and is actually less safe for us as students. And we should also mention that most of the lights on the oval are either bad or very bad. And then reduction in lighting pollution will actually also reveal a clearer night sky, which is both calming and a stress relieving learning opportunity for students.
So another thing we can do besides maybe like redesigning lights, getting rid of lights, is using red lights. So red light is, out of all like the visible light in the electromagnetic spectrum, red light has the longest wavelength. Science stuff, yeah, but it's basically the best when it comes to lights for light pollution. If you've ever heard people saying like, don't look at your phone before bed, the blue light is bad for you. It's kind of similar to that because blue is on the opposite side. It's just the least disruptive. Also, it helps that like our colors are scarlet and gray. We could change some bulbs to red instead of like a yellow if they're not needed and not like in pathways and stuff. If we still want them to be illuminated. For example, the clock tower flashes blue at night. So I know if you live by the clock tower, you may see that it could flash red instead. It's less disruptive, it's better. And it doesn't have to be necessarily red. Warmer colors are genuinely better than like the blues and purples.
So our timeline is put up on this slide here. So the research stage is what we're currently in. To reach the goal that we're shooting for, we're going to have to assess all of the options that are available to us and find which ones are most viable to Ohio State. So that's what this presentation kind of entails. We just want to get a good understanding of what the current situation is. So next is the petitioning stage. Petitioning is our way of getting the students at Ohio State involved and creating a sustainable night sky. And so we're guessing that will take about January. And then the next stage is campaigning, which could take about February through March. We all care about this subject a lot, but the challenge is going to be convincing others to care about it too, specifically the people who are in charge. OSU is really big, so we're expecting a lot of resistance in reducing light pollution, but that just means that we're going to have to work all the harder to find a compromise that is acceptable. And then finally, implementation, that's, turning off the lights finally, changing the lighting fixtures, doing different bulbs. We're hoping to do that at the end of the spring semester in April.
So as with any project, there's a few different pros and cons. Some of the pros are better night sky viewing. We talked about this earlier, but it's just a relaxing experience to see the stars, and it could be a good learning opportunity, especially for astronomy students. Shout out. Another benefit is the health benefits that come with better sleep and healthier circadian rhythms for students. Ecological benefits are also really important. So especially nocturnal animals like bats and owls, they'll just have an easier time if there's less unnecessary lighting. Some of the cons are safety concerns, but Molly mentioned this earlier. If the streetlights are pointed downwards, it would both maintain safety on campus and reduce light pollution. Cost is another issue, but one of our solutions is turning off stadium lights. That doesn't cost anything to just turn off a light switch. And the other cost side of things is that we could modify lights rather than just entirely replace the fixture. So changing the bulbs or just adding a cover would be a lot more cost effective than replacing the whole light. And support is another con, but we think if we talk to student orgs like Sierra Club and Astro Club, we could get a lot of students involved.
And then, as Amanda just mentioned, the only costs we would have for our project, if we were going to go down the updating light fixtures route, it would just be the cost for implementing those changes. And although it would be costly, it would definitely be more doable than actually replacing the entire lamppost in like a timely fashion. And then also, as she said, turning off stadium lights would actually cost nothing. If anything, it would actually save money because the lights would be taking less energy up through the night.
So we had a really great talk with Mike Shelton, who I believe is tuning in right now. He's the Associate Director at the Sustainability Institute here at OSU. He works in the Carbon, Water, and Ecosystem Use Department. So that means that he has a lot of input on energy usage. And he like had some great information about where Ohio State's energy comes from. And we talked about how we actually recently replaced up to 1,000 lights with LED/efficient lighting on campus. And that was just 2019, I believe that was. So the time that we're like getting into this project is, I mean, we're a little bit late to the punch, but that doesn't mean that there's not more to be done. And that's the most important takeaway that we got from that. And then Mike also had some really great contacts for the future, which is FOD and the building coordinators and Steve Volkman from the Office of Urban Planning and Real Estate. And so that I think is really going to help our project go forward.
And that's it. Does anyone have any questions?
Good job.
I have time for a few questions here.
All right, I saw Connor's hand go up first.
So I want to preface this by saying I totally agree. I hate the fact that I look out my window and the sky changes colors every 10 seconds at night.
Yeah.
And I also hate that I can't see the night sky. And I feel like light pollution is definitely a big issue we face. But I know one of the controversies you're into with something like this is obviously, you know, it's safety. You have that diagram about different light fixtures and how they focus light more and how that can be more efficient for some. But I know a lot of the designs behind lights that spread out their light, so to speak, is to give you more visibility at a distance as opposed to a light that focuses right underneath you. You literally can't see as far at night with lights like that. And people feel a greater sense of safety when they can see farther, even if there's nothing there. It's the idea of I could avoid a threat or anything that might scare me. So my question for you guys is, how do you determine which lights are essential and which lights are not with something like this in mind?
So that's a really great point. And that's kind of, yeah, like that's where we hit our first roadblock. And that's kind of why we decided to make this more of a comprehensive approach to improving lighting and reducing light pollution. So say we talk with the people at FOD and they say, well, actually, it's better to have the very bad example because of what you just said. Then we still have like so much that we can still do. Like there's still the stadium lights, there's still red colored lights. And yeah, because we just want to find like a good compromise for all of them. But yeah, that's a great point.
All I'm trying to say is there's a gray zone that would be very difficult to address.
Yeah.
Also for that whole like spreading light thing, the very bad and the bad, I feel like probably both spread light evenly because if it's going up, it's not going to the sides. So just even like putting a little cap on the top could.
Yeah. And even if we don't strive for the best for safety reasons, we could always strive for better. So as you can see, the light is still spread out, but it's not going upwards.
CJ, good question.
And so OSU, as we talked about in class, like the biggest emission is purchased electricity. So how has OSU not addressed stadium lighting and why haven't they addressed it? Are there safety issues that the stadium lights help with? Or for example, red lighting, are there safety issues with red lights? And I don't know if you guys are thinking incandescent or LED, but are there issues with like winterizing those things. Because I know LEDs they're pretty tough to implement in like outdoor settings.
We didn't really talk to Edding Stadium people yet, so we don't know why they keep them on. My assumption is probably just for like school pride. They have that giant like OSU symbol up. I don't assume that it's for safety because it doesn't like illuminate like, what path. So we haven't like discussed that yet, but that's a really good point for us to look into going forward.
Lindsay?
So I was wondering, instead of like doing red light for the clock tower, like why not try to figure out a way to get them shut off at a certain time, say like after everything closes, so there aren't any OSU workers around, and then close it and then like turn everything off at say like 11 p.m. midnight.
So, okay, so basically, that's where safety comes into play. That like big plaza out by like North Drive and our dorm and stuff, like it's gonna have to be illuminated somehow because they're gonna want to keep crime down. So like that kind of came into play with us, like picking our battles and like compromising, like, okay, we're guessing that they're not gonna let us like take out all of the lights. They're probably not gonna let us just turn off the clock tower. Let's try to do something that just makes even the slightest difference.
Yeah, because that's what we thought, like, yeah, that thing probably flashes at night for safety reasons. So have it flash red instead of blue is just a little change, but
In a perfect world, you know.
perfect world would be off.
Yeah.
Good questions.
We're officially ready this time. Okay, I just want to start out by saying thank you so much to everybody for coming and listening to us and for sitting through our technical difficulties. I'm Miriam Bolliard.
I'm Lindsay Dom.
I'm Grant Jones.
I'm Parthakte.
I'm Dan Luke.
And we're really excited to share with you today our bat rehabilitation project. So I'm going to start out by just kind of going through what our general plan is and what this project is about. So to start off, what we want to do is install bat houses around Waterman Farm, particularly as a starting place. We're open to moving out to different areas, but this is kind of the easiest place to implement the whole idea in general. And our goal here is just to provide a place for more bats in the Columbus, Ohio area to kind of migrate to. And the idea of this is that it's kind of going to help with pest control, and then again, just kind of helping brown bat population in this area, because especially in somewhere that's very residential, it's hard to really help those populations. So to monitor the activity that's going on here, we plan to install bat cameras that we will check periodically just to see if the bats have moved in, because there can sometimes be issues with that. So yeah, that's kind of our general concept and where we're going with this idea.
Okay, so bats are often like arguably our most forgotten pollinators. So they have that important role. And they also have the important role of pest control, which is extremely important at Waterman Farm, where they don't use pesticides. They tend to use more natural products. So bats would help with that. And they would help pollinate the crops that are on and around Waterman Farm. They're generally viewed as a common pest, but they have more benefits than cons. Previous bat rehab projects, there haven't been any that we know of so far.
All right, so now I'm just gonna talk about some quick information regarding the benefit of increased healthy bat populations. So the first of these involves economic importance. Due to the various ecosystem services that bats provide, people have estimated that their use or their worth in the US is between $3.7 to $53 billion a year. So they have a substantial impact on the economy. And the little brown bat, just to show how efficient they are,
can catch up to 1,200 mosquito-sized insects per hour. This not only shows its efficiency in pest control, but as well as their ecological impact in controlling insect populations. However, populations of the little brown bat, which was once the most populous or most common species in Ohio, are dwindling due to a disease, a fungal pathogen known as white nose fever. And a 2010 article in a scientific journal estimated that the populations would likely be extinct by 2026 due to this disease. And this is affecting other native species as well, such as the Indiana bat, which is currently listed as threatened. So with native bat species decreasing in their population, we see that this is not only, it's an urgent issue, and it's also, bats provide very many other things that make them worth preserving.
So as with all projects, even our project has pros and cons. So to start us off, the placement of bat houses is location specific. You cannot just pick a location and say, I'm going to put a bat house there. There are many factors such as the bat population in the area, the amount of food available, the population of humans living in the area, etc., that need to be considered. That being said, one of the pros of this point is that we can actually choose which location we want to place our bat houses in using those specific factors, such as Waterman Farm, where bats will be able to eat insects. Bats become a natural insect deterrent in that sense. So since we can place bat houses near Waterman Farm, they will be able to eat those insects and therefore keep the insects away from the crops. So we can also halt the decrease of the number of bats as a species using these bat houses, because we'll be able to better monitor them and conserve their population. That being said, there is a high cost that comes with building, buying, and placing bat houses with regards to the type of wood, the size of the house, etc. We also require permission or approval from the authority in charge of the area to place the bat houses in that area, but we will be able to do that through receiving grants or other promotions. Also, there are more effective and sustainable means to achieve our objectives in a very short amount of time, and we will talk more about this in our timeline.
So yeah, our timeline, we're looking at somewhere between 3 to 4 months during the spring semester to implement this project. Obviously, the first thing that we have to do, like Par said, is get approval. We know the university can be time consuming and slow, but we're hoping by going through them instead of building on a place such as the Olentangy Trail, where you'd have to likely go through ODNR or the Parks and Rec Department of Columbus, that we can avoid more of that hassle. So even though it take a month on the short end, that's still likely better than trying to obtain a permit from any of the other parks, local like metro park systems. Following that, obviously you got to ship the materials, which, you know, we're just playing it safe here, 4 to 6 weeks. So we're not jumping the gun. We just want a safe timeline. And then actually implementing the bat houses, we know that's more of obviously an outdoor activity, and that's something that can be weather dependent. So obviously no one wants to go out in the middle of March if it's just like really crappy outside. That just doesn't make for ideal working conditions, and that just overall probably can create some error in our project. So we don't want to worry about that. So going out on a nice day is when we figure, you know, would be best. So even though it's not difficult to actually implement the houses, a lot of that is weather dependent. And as you can see, a lot of these actions aren't necessarily labor intensive. It's a lot of just waiting around, waiting for approval and getting our supplies. The only actual labor part is simply putting in the houses themselves. And then costs, obviously that's a sizable range between $50 and $125 per house. $50 is likely if we decide to build the houses ourselves. That's the route that we want to go down. And $125 is more for a higher end bat house if we wanted to purchase that online. But higher cost doesn't necessarily mean it's a better house. Like Par said, a lot of it is location dependent. That's, you know, how bats find the houses in open areas. And a lot of those more expensive houses just have a lot of unnecessary bells and whistles that you just don't need for bats to live there. So on the cheaper end, there's definitely, just because you're skipping out on higher cost doesn't mean you're getting worse quality of a product. And also cedarwood is a big one. That's something we learned from talking to our contact, Brian Karstens. He works in EEOB. He's done bat research for 20 years. We got a lot of our information from him. He said that cedarwood is kind of what smells best to bats. That really just smells like home. So obviously having that location are, the two best things. Then monitoring cameras, just something very cheap in a location that wouldn't affect the bats, but would allow us to see if they're actually using the houses, because we don't want to put these in just to know that they're not being used. That just would feel like a waste of time and trying to continuing a project that wouldn't be working. So having these monitoring cameras would allow us to see that the houses are actually being utilized. And then wooden posts, that's an added cost, not something we know if we need yet or not. It really just depends on where we're allowed to build. If we can attach them to, the side of a structure or to a tree that isn't necessarily affected by sunlight, because bats like warm houses. And so having the sunlight keeps the houses warm. So that's a place they want to be. So obviously wooden posts would only be needed if we're trying to implement, if we can't attach them to a strong, sturdy structure, and we'd have to put that in ourselves. So I guess now we can open it up to questions. Yeah.
So what happens if like the bat population that you guys are trying to rehabilitate with these houses gets infected by this fungal disease?
Great question. Right now we know that there's bats at Waterman Farm and they aren't affected by that certain disease. A lot of the diseases that have been found come from around the quarry. That's where like central Columbus bat population was decimated. So unless bats are in contact with, any of those, which is a rather far distance from them to travel and somewhat unlikely, that's not something that I feel we need to be incredibly concerned about. And just starting out with small houses and stuff in a place where, there's like a standing population, we can, move the area if we have to, if they ever were to get, unfortunately, infected. Yeah, Jordan.
I have a couple questions. So I'm not really sure how disease transfer works with bats, but obviously it's common knowledge that they can carry rabies or whatever. What would be the protocol if could they possibly transfer pathogens like that to the other animals at Waterman?
No, that's something that we learned from our contact, Brian Karstens. He said, because that was one of Lindsay's concerns going into this project, is that the animals could potentially infect the surrounding livestock. The bats that we have in central Columbus aren't attacking the animals, just to be clear. They're just really eating small insects and bugs. And the amount of bats that actually have rabies is still a staggeringly low number. So what we learned is that the animals have a better chance of getting rabies from an animal such as a raccoon or a different, mammal in that area. So the bats actually infecting the wildlife is very unlikely. And yeah.
No. Are you thinking this is going to be more of a staff or a student-run project?
We're hoping that this is a student-run project. Obviously, getting contact from the university, and we'd have to work with Waterman Farm is our place that we'd like to set up, just because we know that there's a bat population over there that could use these houses. So we'd be able to tell if they're being utilized very quickly. But we're hoping that us as students can actually put in the houses, and that between us and Waterman Farm can keep in contact using those cameras if they're being used or not. So mostly student, but obviously you need some adult help. Yeah.
What is the necessity of bat houses? Is it that the habitat has been destroyed and you're housing them, or do the houses just exist purely for monitoring reasons?
The houses, we could use them for monitoring, but yeah, it essentially provides a safe haven. Once, I think it was the Columbus quarry got infected, it killed about 99% or 90+% of the bats in that area. And stuff like that has happened all over central Ohio. So having these houses here in a location that we know there's not any infections right now would really just be a safe space for these bats to go, instead of, I know they like using the trees, but this just provides, I guess, a more safe habitat for them to decrease that chance of getting infected.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Connor.
So kind of like I guess what Skylar is asking is what is our reason for choosing to develop more space for these bats to live in? Is there like a noticeable trend you guys have seen in the bat population? Like is there a decrease, I guess, going on? So to speak? And if there is, do we know what the cause of that is?
Yeah, well, that's what we touched on with the, I think it's, white nose syndrome or white nose fever. Yeah, Ohio's just been absolutely just crushed by their bat population's been destroyed. And that's a huge thing for a lot of the agriculture in our area. Obviously, being a big farming community, we produce a lot of crops and agriculture. And those bats eat those animals that can, that affect those crops. And not having that there can lead to a more destruction in that area. And obviously, just like Lindsay said, having that pollination that helps, other plant life thrive. It's really just necessary to keep them like in a here, I guess. I don't know if that helps answer your question. I kind of lost my words, but.
Well, if the fungal disease that you, Skylar, or Tegan talked about is the cause of like sharp decrease in bat population around here, how is providing more housing for bats going to help when the source of the problem is disease?
I guess providing the houses allows for a stable population in that area. Bats are looking for homes, and those homes have been infected. Like talking about the quarry, that home's been infected, and that's where a lot of our bat population was, and it can't be there anymore without them getting infected and transferring that in another area. Providing a location that they know that they can continuously come back to, not only decreases their disease, but also can help increase their population.
I guess what I'm getting at is if you are going to be providing locations for these bats to live that's supposed to be safe and known to be clear of this disease, something you might need to look into would be antifungal.
Columbus tried that and it didn't work as well as they thought it did.
Okay, so this is our project proposal and we're proposing social media accounts. I'm Riley Slisher.
I'm Skylar Getty.
I'm Sadie Hunter.
I'm Jack
I'm Megan.
Okay, so our goal is to create like an engaging social media presence to make the student body excited to participate in sustainability initiatives on and off campus. So the general implementation is going to be 2 to 3 uploads per week, whether that be Instagram posts, TikTok videos, Instagram stories, anything of that matter. And our target audience is people like us, the OSU student body, who may be a little bit less than informed than we are on sustainability initiatives, but want to get involved.
And so why exactly do we need this social media presence? So throughout the process, we found that there is a big lack of student-focused sustainability in social media. And so by creating this account, we would amplify student voices and student concerns over sustainability issues surrounding the university and the surrounding city of Columbus. And another reason that we found is that since OSU is such a large campus with so many students and faculty, there's just so many different resources and organizations and opportunities that many students don't know about. And so through the social media account, we're able to compile all of those and show them to the students, and so they can understand what they can use. And often sustainability for a lot of people is an incredibly big and overwhelming topic. And so they aren't really able to understand it or know where to start, or just because it's so overwhelming, they don't want to start. And so our goal would be to create sustainability and like condense it into smaller, more digestible and easy to understand topics.
So for how this connects to OSU sustainability goals, first through teaching and learning, it provides students a chance to understand sustainability holistically. So like sort of like what Jack just talked about, there's a lot of information about sustainability out there, and our goal is to sort of just put it into one place and make it more clear and easier to understand. And then as for outreach and engagement, we hope to engage with the campus community. So we hope to incorporate other student organizations and amplify like the other Sustains project that is voted on, or any other Sustains events. And then those two kind of come together to help on campus and off campus promote more education about sustainability.
As for our timeline, I think a big pro of this project is that our timeline is kind of flexible. We allotted 1 day to create our accounts, which we've already done. And here, I don't know if this is gonna work, but okay, never mind. But we have them. Go follow. Okay. Back to this. Then we have allotted about a month to grow our following, and obviously that's gonna continue on as long as we have these accounts. Our following will hopefully constantly be growing. And when we talked to Tom Reeves, who is the director of, what is it? Oh, I don't know.
I don't remember the.
I don't remember.
It's a lot of words.
Yeah, we'll get into it later. But he just provided some ideas for us about growing our following. He's worked a lot with at Green Buckeyes, which is another sustainability account to he's done like giveaways, and he just gave us a lot of good ideas for growing our following continually. And then in 6 months, we hope to implement some events of our own aside from just promoting other events. And then as these accounts continue, we hope to expand to other platforms that reach beyond campus.
Okay, so then the important part, how does this connect to OSU students? First of all, we're all college students. We all spend a lot of time on our phones scrolling through social media, and we're really hoping to just put sustainability in the back of the minds of students as they go about their days. So we're trying to get on these platforms that are really popular to students, such as Instagram and TikTok. These platforms will also help connect students to resources. Sustainability is a very hot topic, especially among younger generations like ours. So connecting students to resources will hopefully encourage action. And we're also hoping to increase some connectivity across OSU's campus by connecting students to other OSU student organizations that we promote on our platform.
And so throughout our process and our talk with Tom Reeves, we've identified a few challenges. And so a big one is cultivating an engaged audience. And so that's difficult with social media because of like the fast pace that you scroll through everything doesn't really encourage stopping and slowing down and thinking about what you're reading. And another thing that goes into that is remaining consistent and active. And so by remaining consistent, we'll be able to also grow that engaged audience and reach more people. Another thing that we found is collectivism. There's a lot of arguments against collectivism or like online activism, where a lot of people believe it creates a lot of apathy or situations where people think they're like making progress, but nothing's really happening. But a counter argument to that would be that like the first step in creating and growing a movement or identifying a problem is just letting it be known and spreading like awareness over that. Another potential failure we've talked about is gaining an audience. So from a small account, it's kind of hard to like quickly grow that. And so we hope to promote a bunch of other clubs and organizations, and hopefully they'll return that. Another problem is that similar concepts already exist. And so like there's a few other sustainably focused accounts officially run by OSU, but those kind of leave out the student voices. And so we hope to amplify student voices as opposed to that. Another thing is that we're not affiliated with OSU, and so that means less power and potentially less credibility. And so to combat that, we hope to use like credible sources for all our information.
Jack briefly touched on a lot of the solutions to these problems. The first one, it's just kind of a challenge you're going to have to take on with any social media account. It's just, we've done research, we've talked to experts, and we're just going to do our best to create an engaged audience. For remaining consistent and active, we think it would be doable to run an Instagram account with 5 people. If you're posting 3 times a week, that's like once every other week per admin, which is very doable, we feel like. And especially if we add on more people to this project, that'll decrease the workload per person even more. Collectivism is a little bit of a concern, but as long as we can even just put sustainability in the back of the mind of someone and hopefully influence their decisions later on, we think the account will have been worth it. There is a potential failure in gaining an audience, but once again, we just have to do our best to create one and maintain it.
There are similar concepts that exist already. However, there are no student-run sustainability accounts, and therefore they don't quite as engage as well with students, we feel like. We feel like students respond well to listening to students. And then finally, because we're not affiliated with OSU, we do have less power, but once again, we do take on a little bit of a different tone of student to student versus organization to student.
So there are some strengths to this project. One of them is that it's really easy to implement. As we already said before, that we've already created the social media accounts. We just need to do upkeep and maintain them. And the act of creating a social media account, as well as researching and developing content, is completely free to us. And any cost that would be considered would be extra, as in like a giveaway or like any sort of volunteer project that we want to do. We think that social media is a really good way to connect with students. I'm sure most of you in this room have at least some form of social media, if not multiple platforms that you're on. With us not being affiliated with OSU, we can have a lot more creative freedom, and we can also have less constraints about the type of content that we make. So we don't have to be limited to just certain issues. We can definitely speak out about things that students care a lot more about. We could be an asset to the other projects that are going on. So any other project that moves on, we could promote as well. If there was any volunteer opportunities or any support that a project needed, we could make that happen. And even if we don't have a large following, any following of people who actually pay attention to our content and learn even just the smallest thing is still learning something.
So as for costs, we already touched on most of this. Like obviously there's no associated cost with just creating a social media account. But if we were to do some sort of like service projects or volunteer type things, we kind of like researched a little bit of those costs. So a trash cleanup would probably be around $20 for supplies. Tree planting would be around 200 maybe. And then depending on what we wanted to do for a giveaway on like an Instagram story or something, probably around $30. So even if it did cost any money, it's still like really low.
And as for how other OSU groups have tried something similar, we already touched on this. We talked to Tom Reeves. He's the director at the Office of Student Life's Energy Management and Sustainability Department. He is in charge of running the Green Buckeyes account, which is run by OSU. They have a lot of they're limited in what they can talk about on this account because it is run by the university. So we think that our project, we could be a little more transparent with sustainability issues and talk about things that the student body would be more passionate about. And he also provided us with some general advice for running an account like this. And he suggested that we post, people really like seeing other people on Instagram. So keeping up with content that shows students involved with sustainability. And then he really suggested having consistent posts and not spam. So like 2 to 3 times a week on Instagram stories or just an Instagram post. And he also suggested that we interact with other sustainability accounts and tag them. So that can really gain our following. And then making a schedule and sticking to it for posting to make sure that this has the effect we want it to.
All right, and then now we're open to questions if anyone has any. All right, yeah, Lindsay, saw you first.
I just have a couple. So I noticed that the official OSU account only has like 1,100 followers. So what's your plan engagement like to get people like interested in the information you're giving?
Yeah, so I think we briefly touched on this in that final slide, is that this is just a risk you're gonna have to take with any social media account. It might fail, it's possible. But we do have, with a consistent posting schedule and following some of this advice, we also think as we post more and more, we'll start to recognize trends and what our audience does and doesn't like. So I think that'll help us out too.
And then my second question is, what makes you different from other OSU sustainability accounts, like besides being student run?
Do one of you guys want to answer that?
I think it can be like a lot more personal and catered to what students really like. Like I think a lot of offices become out of touch because they're so focused on like, what do these numbers say? What are students actively engaging in? When like we know students, like if someone doesn't show up to an, like say a movie night or something, like the university might think, oh my God, we failed. Like this doesn't work. We'll never do this again. But a lot of us can understand like student to student, if you get busy one night, like you're not going to go to this event. Like a lot of times event failures
or things of that matter, like our interests, there are a lot of times time constraints, and we can understand each other in that way, where I feel like a lot of people don't consider that.
And another thing is, when we were talking to Tom Reeves, they have like a lot of restraints about what they can talk about. They need to be apolitical. And I think in a lot of environmental justice conversations, that's not really the most beneficial thing. So we would be able to take more of a stance on those issues.
Mim, you want to go?
I just kind of like, you guys talked about how it's really important to like keep on a consistent schedule. So my question is, what you guys would have kind of planned for like breaks or like summertime things, and if you want to keep it going through that, even though it could obviously be harder to like plan events if you were at that point, or kind of just what your idea is on what you guys think you would do during those like extended leave periods.
I can take that one. So like things we could do is like content about move out and move in. Like, what do you do with your end of the school year waste? Like, where do you put your paper? Could you donate something anywhere? Could you keep something for next year and encouraging that? Or encouraging people to do like little things in their backyard. Like, do you have a backyard? Could you make a compost pile? Like, here's how, here's what I do at my house. And just sharing this content to keep people in touch with things over the summer at their own houses. And also to keep in mind when they come back, I think could be really important with interacting with the student base.
So we'll do a couple questions that are from the online audience. So 2 questions. So one is, what is your plan? That's awkward. What is your plan after you all move on from sustains? Like, how will you keep this going? And then how would you ensure that your information is accurate?
I think we kind of talked about how we would make sure our information is accurate. Like, as of right now, we've just kind of said that we would have to create a system where like multiple of us would have to approve posts that had like facts or statistics in them. It can't just be like one person that's like, oh, I like this up, and like I'm just gonna post it and say that it's true. So we kind of talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's up in the air as to what the account will be after we graduate. I think it's flexible in that if other students are like passionate about it, they could take on this project, or we could broaden it, because I know there's a lot of sustainability accounts. We don't need to necessarily be about OSU. Could always evolve into something else, just posting general information about environmental justice. It really just depends on where it goes.
Were there any other online questions?
Yeah, one more. They were asking you if your personal views will be incorporated in your posts. I think you kind of touched on that a little bit.
Like yes and no. So I think like no one is going to say like, I like this, but like definitely a political affiliation will not be entirely avoided, simply because when it comes to issues like environmental justice and climate change, there does seem to be like a political implication with it. So like, yes, in the sense that we agree with those things, like we agree climate change is real and everyone should have access to clean water. And that does tend to be like treated as an opinion, but not in the sense of like, we will be posting things that we like and are not like factually based or like meant to help someone.
We have time for one more question.
All right.
Amanda, you've been waiting so patiently.
I was just, because you guys mentioned admins really fast. Were you guys picturing having like a face of the account, like Megan, you're the face of this account? Or would it be more of like a background, like it's like you don't know who they are, it's more of like a general, hello, we're sharing this information, and there's never like names or faces involved? Like,
Honestly, we haven't really discussed it. I guess
Yeah.
we're open.
I'm not opposed to having names and faces attached to it. Like, I don't really like the idea of like making this my identity, like as like an activist, as an environmentalist. Like that's something that's earned and done through your actions. But I do think like having like faces you can identify with it, like if all of us were posting as stuff that we were doing, it would make people want to be more involved, because like people seeing people, or like action inspires hope. Like when you see people doing things, it does make you more hopeful, want to take action on things, rather than just like passively viewing something.
All right, well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah.